Let's take a closer look at these numbers from Ericsson and what they really mean. Martin Garner is Director of Mobile Internet at CCS Insight. Thanks for being with us, Martin. So you were telling us before what you were expecting from Ericsson. How do those results compare?
Well, this is clearly slightly better news than we all thought. I haven't yet heard their outlook for Q4, which I think is probably the biggest single aspect of how to interpret these results. And really, quite keen to hear that before we kind of...
Well, the moment that crosses the
Right.
screen, we will indeed get that to you.
But certainly as far as emerging markets are concerned, that seems to be a good growth area.
Well, exactly. I think the underlying demand for what Ericsson does is very strong indeed. There are lots of new broadband networks being rolled out. There are lots of networks being upgraded to the fourth generation, and there are more and more users using smartphones and tablets and generating traffic and filling up the networks. So the underlying demand is strong. The biggest question is whether the networks will have the confidence to keep investing under the current economic conditions.
Right, that is certainly why we saw things slowing down in the U.S. Yeah. Is that an area that's very important to Ericsson? Is that an area that you're going to be looking at?
Sure. Well, what we saw in 2001-2002, there was a big tech sector crash, and the networks switched off their capital spending because they were uncertain about the future. Actually, they then had a boom in spending a bit later on, and if they switch it off now, then there's likely to be another boom a couple of years down the line, so because the underlying demand is so strong. Now, Ericsson is on the wrong end of that, if you like, because if the spending goes off, they have to deal with it.
Yeah, we still are waiting for that outlook, and as soon as we get it, we shall bring that to you. I did want to ask you about the Sony-Ericsson tie-up. Is Sony, do you think, about to buy out its Swedish partner?
Well, I don't know the answer to that.
No one knows, but what's your gut feeling on this?
There is speculation about that, and there is quite a strong logic for that, because if Sony controlled Sony Ericsson, it would have the option then to tie the phones and some of the services around that in with PlayStation and TVs and some of the other products that it makes, which would put it down the sort of path that Apple and Samsung are trying to move down.
Does it make sense?
At present, it can't.
Does it make sense for Ericsson, however? Where does that leave the European mobile phone industry for a start?
Well, interesting. Ericsson does need to have a strong understanding of how consumers are using the networks, and Sony Ericsson partly gives that. And so it's slightly mixed logic for Ericsson.
Let's move on. While we wait for that outlook to come from Ericsson, let's move on to Nokia as we're talking about mobile phones, because they're out today as well. What are you anticipating there? Well,
Nokia, we need to remember, has been in some difficulty and is in the middle of a big transition. Exactly 12 months ago, the new CEO joined, put in place a new strategy, and is working through that now. So we're not expecting much improvement in the results yet. The bigger story really is that they're having a large event in London next week where we're expecting them to launch a new phone based on Windows.
Because they desperately need a new best-selling product, don't they?
Yes, and so really the improvement will start after that. And so really what we're looking for is what happens next week in London.
Where does Nokia's market share lie at the moment? We were used to it being the world's biggest handset maker. But
that's right. The market share fell quite spectacularly during the last quarter's results, where it lost 20% of its volume. And so we're expecting the market share to be flat on last quarter.